In this segment of the show, I like to show the way in which Democrats have distorted and perverted Christianity and tried to use it for their own purposes. But often the way this kind of works itself out in the culture is the way in which we have removed Christianity from the culture and what we're putting in its place. And I certainly have, I think, a story of that as we look at UNLV in a recent shooting that took place. According to Yahoo News, a gunman, an academic who had applied for a job at the university, opened fire in a building Wednesday, killing 3 faculty members and wounding a visiting professor, throwing the campus into a state of emergency and grief. On Friday, the university, acknowledging the trauma students and faculty have experienced, canceled on-campus in-person finals. Instead, faculty and students have flexibility to decide how to end their semester. Optional online finals or take-home projects can be taken to improve grades. Otherwise, students will earn a grade based on their work before December 6th, the day of the shooting. Students will also be given the opportunity to receive credit for their classes without a grade. And in the midst of this kind of gun violence, we hear very often that prayers aren't enough, and I'm going to argue that the exact opposite is true. The experts that want to tell us about guns will also tell us that prayers are not the solution to some of the senseless acts of violence that we see in America today, and I'm going to tell you there couldn't be anything further from the truth. Now, I'm not going to make an empirical argument as much as I am going to make a logical argument right now. And this won't even necessarily prove that God exists, but I hope you will see through it that it will prove the necessity of God. Let me read one last part of the story, and then I'll try to draw some conclusions. The story will go on, and it will say this: graduation ceremonies will go on, but not exams, and even some will be given credits without grades. So let me get this straight. Graduation ceremonies will take place as planned, but you will be able to pass without taking an exam. You'll be able to get credit without even needing a grade. So you could have screwed off all semester, chased girls, got drunk, and now you're going to get credits for those classes without actually having to pass them. Now, it's interesting to me, the double standard here, because they're full-on happy to celebrate themselves with a graduation ceremony, but too traumatized to actually get the grades that they earned all semester long. I only bring this up to just try to illustrate this simple point, that I think as a society, we're becoming soft. And past generations know this to be true. And I can't help but believe that because we have moved Christianity from the public square and now are a more secular nation than we have been in past generations, that we are creating a generation of people who cannot deal with adversity like we have in past generations. Now, I know many of you will argue, well, that's correlation, not causation. I'm going to say to you that obviously, I think that you have a point there, so I'll hedge my bet and say it's possible that it's just that it's correlation and not causation. However, I think when you look at the way in which people today are able to handle adversity and suffering and difficulty, it is undeniable that when we were a more religious nation, we were able to handle more things. And I can't help but believe that those two things are related. And I want to say more about this. Scottish patriot Andrew Fletcher said this: "Let me make the songs of a nation, and I don't care who makes its laws." The sentiment is a powerful reminder that culture really matters. But I would take that quote one step further and say probably one of the most important cultural norms is how we deal with suffering. So I will show you a generation and how they deal with suffering, and I will show you their future. As a culture, we are taught to have safe spaces, to rage on social media. I'm not that old, but even I was taught in college, and not so long ago, that the only way to develop a strong and thoughtful worldview is to have it challenged, to apply pressure to it, to make sure that it can stand up to scrutiny. Today, we are teaching a generation of young kids that you can totally redefine reality with a simple feeling. Not only is it absolutely ridiculous to say you can feel like a woman, whatever that even means, but even more deadly is the idea that our feelings are now deeply epistemically potent. So I say, show me how a generation handles difficulty, and I'll show you the future of that generation. That's why I suggest to you that yes, we should be concerned what took place at UNLV. We should take the time to mourn for those people who lost their loved ones. And you might even argue, well, Reed, it is a petty thing to talk about the way in which we handle suffering when these people lost their lives. But I don't think so. I think it actually really, really matters. I think it matters because where you put your hope can control you. You know, psychologists and psychiatric professionals are so concerned with the locus of control, and that religion makes people lose their locus of control and puts their locus of control in something else. And I would argue that just by going to a psychologist, you're taking your locus of controlling and putting it in their hands. And so we do this very often. And I would tell you, the way we place our hope matters, because it will determine who actually controls us. And we are all hoping in something. And I'm just saying the way that we're doing it in our secular society doesn't provide the kind of basis that we need to really endure suffering, because we don't have the hope that can withstand the difficulties that this world is bringing us and that every generation in the past has had to go through. We're just not equipped. We don't have the equipment for it like we used to in the past. And so that's why I think it's important to use this tragic shooting as an opportunity to share with you something that Marx knew very well. Karl Marx called religion the opiate of the masses because, one, he hated Christianity, but also because he believed that Christianity provided a narrative for suffering that was antithetical to revolution. If you couldn't stir people up to be angry about the things that they were enduring in this life, and if you couldn't get them to blame institutions and to blame the bourgeois, then you wouldn't truly be able to stir up the kind of revolutionary rage necessary to destroy everything and recreate everything in the image of Marx. So as you can see, where you put your hope does control you. Marx knew this well, and he wanted people to put their hope not in God, but to put their hope in him. Now, this is kind of illustrated, I think, in a beautiful way in a dialogue in one of my favorite movies as a kid, The Never-Ending Story. There's a scene at the end of the movie where Gamork, a big wolf, is speaking to Atreyu, and he says something fascinating that you need to hear.
Is the nothing?
It's the emptiness that's left. It is like a despair, destroying this world. And I have been trying to help it.
But why?
Because people who have no hopes are easy to control. And whoever has the control has the power.
That last line says it all. Whatever you hope in can control you. As a believer in God, I'm happy to say I hope God controls me. I hope he controls my attitude, my thinking, and the way in which I treat other people. I hope he controls me. But let's just be real honest about what our culture is hoping in by and large. Whatever is controlling them, all it's doing is producing despair, anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. I want to simply make a Pascal's wager with you. If it's true that just acting as though God exists is enough to help us actually hope in something that is bigger than ourselves and bigger than our suffering, and if that provides the kind of anchor for our soul that we need, then it would be better to live as though God exists even if he didn't, because it's certainly not working believing that he doesn't exist in the present. Now, that doesn't prove that God exists. I understand. It only proves the necessity of belief in God. I believe God does exist, and I believe that that only brings further weight to the argument I just made. But I think it is undeniable that we're producing a generation of people who don't really know how to really grapple with a fallen world. And as C.S. Lewis said, I think we need to hear it today. If we find that nothing in this world can satisfy, it could be that we were built for something more than this world. And if that's true, it's time we started putting our hope in something bigger than ourselves. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and to go with God.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.